8 Narcissus or daffodil fragrances that are so different. I think each one of these are different. Yes, my new background looks like shiny aluminum foil or saran wrap, but you know what? I'm up in my studio, I'm out of the way of the kitchen or the living room, have the space to myself, I can take as much time as I want to, and I can replicate this pretty much anytime. And also, hey, just for fun, there's LED lights in the background. Don't know when I would use that for, but here we are. Anyway, so why a Narcissus video? Why daffodils? Well, we are getting close to springtime, and daffodils are one of the first things to come up in spring. They have a very distinct and unique smell. However, I do have maybe like 2 of these fragrances I think actually would be really great for cooler weather. So it is unusual to associate Narcissus or daffodil with cold weather because it's typically used in green fragrances. It is a yellow floral. You know, this is like a full-on springtime floral. Seasonally, it is a springtime floral. They're usually dead long before autumn rolls around, but I figure these 2 are honorable shoutouts and worth mentioning. So as I have done in my previous videos, I'm actually going to test on my own skin. I'm going to start up here, little spritz, give you my experience, explain the notes, kind of explain what it smells like if you've never smelled it before, and then I will roll my sleeve down gradually as we go so I cover up the previous scent and it is not interfering with the new scent. So I'm trying to figure out what order I should go in. Should I start with like the most just like standard springtime photorealistic Narcissus? I guess that would be this one. This is a weird nest fragrance, really old, probably discontinued, but I'm obsessed with Nest. That was like the fragrance that got me into fragrance. And then when I started getting on this Narcissus kick and I saw that this existed, I had to get it. So I don't know how many of them still exist. Despite being discontinued, I didn't pay that much for it. It wasn't egregious. I think probably somewhere between $50 and $70, which is not bad considering how expensive Nest can be retail. And then, you know, when things get discontinued, usually the price skyrockets. But this was not egregious. Like, I'm a broke bitch and I could afford this. So I would say out of all the Narcissus that I have, this one is the most realistic, perhaps. So the first spray, and it could be just because this is very old. I don't know how long this has been around. But the first spray is a little bit waxy and papery. It is a little bit like opening a box of crayons, but it fades pretty quickly. And I would say this is pretty realistic. Like, it's green. I get the green stems, but the unique thing about this Narcissus is that I don't interpret this as a heady, indolic scent. A lot of Narcissus and daffodils have this like heady, indolic, almost animalic scent that I always describe as pinchy or puckery. To me, I feel it like pinch my sinuses. It's one of those things that goes straight up my nose and into my head. Similar to jasmine. I think a lot of people might get a similar experience with jasmine. This Narcissus does not do that. I experience most of it right down here in the front of the nostrils. This does not go straight up the sinuses. So it is quite dry. It doesn't have like a wet, skunky, pissy smell that a lot of Narcissus has. And I'm not complaining because I have grown to like that smell. This is very straightforward. It is what it says it is. There may be other florals in here, but they don't stand out and they don't take away from this. The only thing I am noticing is that this reminds me a little bit of Nest Passiflora, and that is kind of a polarizing scent because some people say that it smells like rotting vegetation. There is the tiniest little bit of a sweet, rotting vegetation smell. Ordinarily, when I smell fermentation, I think of orange blossom. Orange blossom has like a slight fermenty smell. But I don't think there's orange blossom in here. It might just be part of like whatever green accord Nest has in their back room that they pull out when they want to add a green note. So it does have a little bit of that Passiflora DNA, which is green. You could interpret it as like sweet, rotting vegetation, but I can also kind of interpret it as like a watermelon rind, like a sweet green watermelon rind, or alternatively like fresh cut grass. So yes, a green, little bit of a watermelon rind, green stems, photorealistic, but the flower itself is like a white, dry, like paper narcissus, like just straight up, straightforward, yellow, floral, white floral narcissus. Like it is what it says it is, and I love it, and I think it is fantastic for springtime. Roll that down. Let's see, what's the next springtime one? Okay, Penhaligons or Penhaligons, Ostara, Ostara. I think that means Easter. That's like the pagan Easter holiday. I got this because I asked a fragrance group for a fragrance that smells like Easter. And I described my interpretation of Easter. I said, you know, fresh florals, aquatic, but also green, but also I want some candy in there. I wanted some sweetness, you know, like, jelly beans or those chocolate malted eggs. I wanted something that would remind me of like the Easter basket and the fake grass and the jelly beans and the candy and all of that stuff. And everybody unanimously voted for Ostara. And it is a roll-on, and again, I think this is another one that has been discontinued for a while, so, you know, it might have a little funk in the opening. But I always feel like I miss out on the top notes if I have a rollerball. I really do feel like atomizers mix the fragrance with the air the way it's supposed to be presented, and that's when you get your hit of top notes. So I do feel like I miss out on the top notes whenever I have a rollerball or a dabber. So just keep that in mind. So right away I can tell you it is sweeter than the previous. Previous Nest White Narcisse was like green, almost salty or savory in comparison to this. This has a sweeter, almost like a honeycomb. I don't think this is meant to be spicy, but I could see somebody pulling something like cinnamon out of this, at least compared to the last one. If this were the first one I smelled, I would be like, oh, it's so photorealistic. There's no sweetness in here. But just, you know, comparing it to the last one, this is quite sweet. I feel like when I first got this, the first time I tried it, I was disappointed because I thought it was too soapy. But, like, I'm not getting a lot of soap this time. I think there's a little bit of like a hyacinth in here. There is something else that is a little bit green and sweet. There's also a little bit of like a woody, vanilla, kind of ambery, soft, cozy thing happening at the bottom. I don't think the Nest White Narcisse had that base, but this one really is feeling like it's going to dry down as something like warm and cozy and musky. Next, I think I can get 4 on each arm. All right, by Kilian. Good girl gone bad. The first time I smelled this, it was a tiny micro perfume sample with a wand applicator. Like this. And to me, it stood out from all the other white florals that I was sampling at that time. I thought it was like peachy, nectary. There was something really like sweet and honeyed about it, and I could not figure out what it was, and I was like, oh my god, I need a big girl bottle. It's really expensive, so I could not afford a big girl bottle, so I just got a little travel spray instead. Now, the travel spray gives you more of a peppery osmanthus top note. That is what people are smelling when they say, oh my god, this smells like pepper and milk. This smells like a glass of milk with pepper in it. This fragrance, in my experience, needs heat and sunshine for that peppery top note to fade, and then you get the really creamy, sultry, like wet florals. Just the nozzle smells so good. I don't want to waste it. Good, just the tiniest spritz. I'm kind of glad the atomizer doesn't make a big spray of fine mist, just one little squirt, because I want to save it. Yeah, peppery and green and sharp in the opening, but I promise it does not stay that way. There is also tuberose in here, so it does have a little bit of what people describe as screechy. Tuberose is not screechy to me. I don't interpret it as screechy, but it can be sharp and super sweet. And I think the opening is kind of off-putting for people. You really have to give this a chance. You really have to let it sit for like 15-20 minutes, especially out in the sunshine. This really transforms in the sunshine. This is a little bit rosy too, so this can be a heavier, like more wet kind of jammy vibe in compared to the last two. So if you smell this and you're really disappointed with how like heavy and sharp and like overbearing it is, like if you feel like your senses have been assaulted, just wait. Like I promise, it will dry down into like a milky, creamy white floral, and there is a base of, I think, cedar and amber, and it will really just be like a really, really delicious, luxurious, creamy, cozy white floral. That is fabulous for springtime, but like warmer springtime, I think. Love in White by Creed. I actually don't think I've sampled this one yet. I had another video where I was sampling like all these different like popular fragrances, and I think I did a couple of other creeds, but I don't know if I did Love in White yet. So let's just do this one right on the back of the hand. This supposedly also has Narcissus in it. So again, missing out on top notes because we don't have an atomizer. At least that's how I feel. Okay, so this is probably the soapiest of the bunch. This one is like predominantly floral. I don't smell a ton of sweetness. I don't smell any like really green notes. I don't think there's any vanilla. It's got a little hint of citrus in there, which is, it's almost reminding me of like dial soap, like hand soap, like the soaps that have a little bit of like an orange blossom or like apple blossom flavor. So it's a tiny bit citrusy. Yeah, it's just like floral soap. There's nothing really standing out about this. Just the regular one. I know they make like a Love in White Summer. No, this is just regular Love in White, not the not Love in White Summer, just regular Love in White. Yeah, it's just soapy. It just smells like soap compared to the other ones. It doesn't even smell particularly daffodil-y. You know, like I would not consider this a daffodil fragrance. Unless somebody said there's daffodil in there, it's there, but you have to work to find it. I would say there's more like generic floral, you know, like rose, jasmine. It's actually very not special considering how expensive a lot of Creed fragrances are. Just wash your hands real good with some fancy hand soap and you'll smell exactly the same. All right, moving on to the other arm, I'm actually going to pick up another Nest fragrance. This is Dahlia and Vines. I only have a rollerball because I didn't think it was great enough to get a big bottle. I actually don't like this one. It looks like it could be really cool and really interesting, but it just comes out smelling very sour on me. If memory serves, this has notes of peony, rose, grape, narcissus, and something else. At first, it smells like a fruity cocktail or sangria. I do get fruity, jammy grape, but heavily, heavily perfumed. It's like a perfume that is trying to smell like grape sangria. And then the grape turns sour. It starts to smell like rancid wine. And for me, I interpret this as like a sickly sweet sour. This is like an acidic heartburn burp. You ever like have a really sour burp and it's like that sick, sweet, but sour? It like makes your throat feel really like gross. That's what this is like. I feel like the idea was good, but they just could not execute it. But if you like very tart, sour smells, you'll probably like that. On the topic of sour narcissus, sour green perfumes, Marc Jacobs Perfect. It has top notes of narcissus and rhubarb. So it does open really sour. Rhubarb tends to have like a kind of tart sort of strawberry flavor going on. It's more sweet and more woody and more like ethanol-y than Nest, Dahlia, and Vines. They're both sour, but this one is not like But this one is not acidic and rancid. It's more like alcoholic, and I think the ethanols just need to dry. There's probably like a different ratio of alcohols versus oils. It's starting to smell like a gummy bear. I really don't detect a whole lot of the Narcissus, but the really cool and weird thing about Marc Jacobs Perfect is it starts out so fruity. It starts out smelling like candy, but then suddenly out of nowhere you start smelling like almond. And it's got like a creamy, nutty vibe. It's so weird how something could start out so like tart, sweet, juicy, fruity, green, and then turn into cozy and nutty. And then I'm pretty sure the base notes of this are cedar and cashmere, so it just continues drying down into something like soft and cozy, which is such an opposite from how it opens. You would not expect this to dry down the way it does. So it's really unique. Is it like a Narcissus perfume? I don't think so. I don't think this is meant to be an in-your-face daffodil fragrance, but I figured it was worth mentioning because it is there, but it does not persist throughout. However, Marc Jacobs Perfect Intense, I think, ramps up the Narcissus, and it doesn't have as much of the fruity opening. So I actually really like it. And this is one of the two that I said might be better for cooler weather. I think this is a really good fall fragrance. They got rid of the rhubarb, they got rid of the fruit, they amped up the headiness of the Narcissus or daffodil with jasmine. The star of the show is still almond, and I think they let it shine more by just giving it a base of sandalwood. They didn't want to detract from it too much with like the cashmere notes. But they are similar in that they both dry down staying really cozy, really creamy. Like this, by the time this dries down, I feel like I'm wrapped in white linens. It really is a nice Narcissus for cool weather. Okay, now this last one, I might be in the minority. I might be one of the only people that has this fragrance. Chloé Narcisse. This was my mother's. She used to have so many perfumes, and then she just, like, she never wore perfume. She said it irritated her skin or something, so she never wore the perfumes. And so, of course, she never touched this. It's mostly full. This little sucker is going for up to $400 on eBay. I can't believe this little sucker is worth that much. So this is pretty unique because it is a spicy Narcissus. You would not think that spices and Narcissus would go very well together, but it kind of works with this. It's unusually fruity in the opening, and I think this has marigold, which is not something I see in a lot of perfumes because I feel like marigold, similar to Narcissus, similar to jasmine, can have a little bit of like a sour, pissy smell. I know you're supposed to plant marigolds around your tomatoes so that it keeps the flies away. Supposedly bugs don't like the smell of marigold, so that's a good way to protect your vegetables. But there's like apricot and peach in here, so it's kind of like jammy and fruity. It really does feel like autumn fruit preserves, like canning season when you first spray this. And then you start to detect some powder and some spices. So there is violet in here. There's also like pineapple in here. So it's really like zingy in the beginning. Reminds me of like that ginger zinger tea by what tea company was it that made like a ginger, like a zingy ginger hibiscus raspberry kind of, I don't know, I'll post a picture if I can find it. And then it starts to get a little bit powdery and spicy and also rosy. It really is intoxicating despite being floral. It smells like how the bottle looks. You know, it smells like red. You know, it smells red and deep and dark and woody and cozy and ambery, even though I don't think amber is listed as one of the notes, but it really is quite special, and I can understand why the price is so high because I have never smelled anything else like this. This has like a profile of nothing I've ever smelled before. And because of those spices and woods and stuff, that really does make this perform better in cold weather. I don't think this would vibe really well with hot weather. It might turn kind of like skunky or smell like body odor on a dude that sprayed like Axe chocolate spicy deodorant or something, you know? Yeah, you would not want this mixing with sweat. So those are the main Narcissus scents that I have. Excited to bust out most of them for springtime, except for the last two, which I said might be better for cold weather. So of the springtime versions, if I had to rate them from best to worst, or just my most favorite to least favorite, I would say by Kilian is number one, just because it really has a creamy, milky accord that like I don't smell very often in floral perfumes, and I think they do a really good job with it. Once you can get past that opening, I think this is really, really unique, unlike anything I've smelled before. I think Nest White Narcisse comes in second place. I know it's discontinued, so it could be a little bit hard to find, but the people that are selling it are not selling it for that much money. I did not go broke buying this, and it is really pleasant. Number three is Ostara. It's sweeter, has a little bit more of like a honey, kind of maybe cinnamony, vanilla-y. It's like you added sugar to the last two. And it's not bad. Like, it might almost be in a tie for second place for me. But I'm just generally like a diehard Nest fan, so maybe that's the only reason Nest beats this one. I would say it's almost tied for second. It is very good. Fourth place, Marc Jacobs Perfect. Even though it's not what I would call a daffodil scent, you know, it's only really in the top notes with that rhubarb, so it's like really fruity and like candy in the beginning. The way it starts to dry down with the almond really is kind of the redeeming quality. And let's be honest, after this, if we're only sticking to springtime fragrances, it's a toss-up between these two, and I don't like either one. This one smells like a sour, acidic heartburn burp. This one just smells like fancy soap, so I really don't think either of these are worth the price if you're looking for something that smells like Narcissus. And as usual, not sponsored, not a paid promotion, not a good review in exchange for a free sample. And now my arms smell delicious. Thank you so much for watching. I will smell you later.